Dewey, thanks very much for joining us for a few minutes. We're here to talk to you about your book just out, Behind the Gold Glove. Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove. You know, we were joking before we started. Let me ask you this simple question. Where'd you get the name Dewey from when your first name is Dwight?
Well, there's not much of a story to it other than I was in single A, and the manager was Don Locke, who had a really good major league career, and he was our manager. And we had one guy named Don Newhouser on the team, pitcher. He ended up pitching in the big leagues. And they called him Newey. And then we had a guy from Dominican. His name was Louie. And then he started calling me Dewey. And that's the extent of it. And the funny thing about it was when I first came up to the big leagues, I was 20. And my father was in Idaho in his restaurant, and he had his buddies there. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And Kurt Gowdy's the announcer, and he says, "Fly ball to Dewey Evans in left field." I came up, and they put me wherever I could play, and that was left field. And I told him, and the ball, I lost it in the sun. It was a 1 o'clock game in this fall, and the sky was just, went right in the sun. I lost it, went over my head, and landed about 15 feet behind me. And then the next play, it happened to Harper in left center. It went past him. And I was trying to tell my dad this, and he goes, "I don't care about that. What's this stuff, Dewey?" And he goes, "It sounds like something you flushed down a toilet." I said, "Dad, if you had heard what they said to me in left field after that ball went over my head," I said, "Dewey sounds pretty good."
That's awesome. The book, it deals with your personal, but also your professional. Let's start with your professional career. And I worked for Kurt Gowdy Broadcasting up in Lawrence for all those years, and I got a press pass, and I would be in there with my microphone as you got dressed and talked after games and what have you. What do you remember, or what's your fondest memories of the Boston Red Sox in your career in a Red Sox uniform?
Being in World Series play, being in playoffs. We were in 4 playoffs, had a chance for 4 World Series. Of course, we got blown out by Oakland the latter part of the 80s. But to be in 2 World Series was very special. The biggest regret, I would say, is not winning. And I didn't like being a bridesmaid, and we were twice. And that was my biggest regret. But I had a lot of fun. Winning is when a team comes closer. It's the best time. People always ask me, I came to the plate 10,500 times. What was your favorite at bat? I'm going, I don't know, but with a season that everybody comes together and you're winning and you're playing together as one, and that was the best time in the game for me.
And when you look at that, I think everybody circles, as you know, the 1975 World Series and that Game 6, and they talk about Bernie Carbo and Fisk and what have you, but it was that catch that you made going back in a tough place to play right field, and you doubled up the runner. Take us through that play, and now you look back on it. How cool was that for you to look back and say maybe that's one of your signature defensive plays in your career, because you were known also big time for your defense?
Well, that was a special moment, and I can remember as it was yesterday that I was going through all kinds of scenarios with Griffey on first base, Griffey Sr., and he was one of the fastest guys in the game. And I'm going through a line drive to right center, line drive down the line drive base hit to me. I got to try to throw him out at third. Ground ball hit to me. All these, if it goes over my head, I got to be willing to go. It's 11th inning. I got to be willing to go into the stands. And all this was going through my head, and that's what usually players do. I think all great plays are made before the ball is hit. You run through it in your mind, and that way you anticipate it happening. So it just happens. It's second nature. So when he hit the ball, when a left-hander hits a ball at you in right field, or if you're in left field, the ball always curves towards the line. It's just, that's the way the nature of the game is. And Joe Morgan hit it, and I went back, I turned to my left, and I ran, and I'm running towards the corner a little bit, just trying to go with the ball. The ball never curved. It stayed straight. So what it was doing is getting behind me. And it wasn't the greatest catch ever made, but it was the most important catch ever made. And what happened was I lost the ball, Dan, from here to here. I caught it behind my head, but I lost it in that 2.5 foot span, which is really scary as a fielder. And when it landed in my glove, no one was more surprised than me. And then I look up, I catch the ball, realize where I'm at. I don't know if it would have gone out or not. I think it'd been really close, if not. But the first thing I do is I turn around. And the first thing I look at is the lights over third base and home plate. So it's like looking into the sun. So I'm blinded. And I couldn't see where Griffey was. I just threw it towards first base. The ball was off by 20 feet, but I had the wherewithal to get it in quick. And Yaz took it, threw it to Burleson. And it was, like I say, it wasn't the greatest catch ever made, but it was the most important catch. And, during that game, Dan, in a 6th game, I'm on third base. It's late in the game, and it's in the book. I'm on third base, and they're changing pitchers. And Pete Rose comes over to me. He calls me Dewey. I'm going, how's he know my name? Nickname, that. He goes, can you believe this? And I'm looking around. I'm 23, and I'm going, what? He goes, this might be the greatest game I ever played in. Pete Rose says that. And from what I heard in the last few years, he also said it to Fisk at home plate. But now I'm looking around, I'm realizing where I'm at and the moment I'm in. And a guy like Pete Rose says that to you, so it must mean something. He had the wherewithal to realize what kind of a game we were playing in.
Well, and you look at those teams, right, too, just the talent. I mean, Yaz obviously in the Hall of Fame, but you look at the Reds and, Tony Perez, as well as Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench behind the plate. Like, there were Hall of Famers all over the place in that game. Many argue that Louis Tiant should be in the Hall of Fame. I personally also think and I hope you get voted in by the senior committee, should be in the Hall of Fame. So that was, not only was it a great World Series that went 7 games and had that game 6, but it was a star-studded World Series when you look back on it too.
It really was. And what you just said about Tiant, I'm not going to respond about me. I have my own feelings about that. But Tiant had 49 complete games. And now you might not see 49 complete games in 3 seasons in all of baseball.
True.
So he had 49 complete games and he had 78. I'll take that back. 49 shutouts and 78 complete games. And he's the only guy to have 49 shutouts and that many complete games that's not in the Hall of Fame. He was a competitor. He was a gamer, and he was the funniest guy in the clubhouse of anybody I've ever been around. And even the other teams that had him and had the privilege of playing with Louis said that he was the funniest man on earth. And he was. He just had a way of making everybody laugh, keeping the moment light, even in a tough situation. He was funny.
Well, you don't want to talk, obviously, about you in the Hall of Fame, but your career, how proud are you of your career? I mean, you look just at the numbers, the 3-time All-Star, the 8-time Gold Glove, 2 times Silver Slugger. And what impressed me a lot about your career was 18 years of 10 or more home runs, 11 with 20 or more, 3 with 30 or more, and you led the AL in walks 3 times and top 10 7 times. You would have made a ton of money under Theo, right? Because of your OBP just alone, right, to start with. So
it's not that I won't
was cool. Yeah.
It's not that I won't talk about it, Dan. It's just that I'm not going to be a complainer. I don't want to do that. But Theo Epstein, when I was hitting coach and I became part of the organization, he comes up to me, I think 2005. He goes, "You're the kind of player that I go after, that has a high base on percentage, a good defensive player, got some power." He says, "You're the kind of guy, you could have made a lot of money in the game." And I said, well, at that time it was 15 years too late. But I enjoyed myself. I did. I didn't really think about all that stuff when I was playing. But when I came up for voting, I think it was 96 or 97, I'm not quite sure. Things were going on in the game. McGuire and Sosa were hitting 60-plus home runs. And then the writers started saying, well, it's no longer a criteria when I was playing was 400 home runs. And they're saying that's no longer the criteria. It's 500 or 550. And they got caught up in the steroid era. And that bothered me because I think that everybody that is elected into the Hall of Fame should be judged on the era that they played in. Not here I am 30 years removed from the game and probably getting more attention about that than ever in my retirement. But I would enjoy that. I mean, I really would. I worked hard, and I took it very seriously about the game. In fact, I had somebody this winter, I think it was George Bell and Albert Bell or a few other guys, they go, you always had I never wanted to talk to you. You always had the meanest look on your face. And I went, well, I wasn't really thinking mean things. I was just concentrating. and the book talks about that too, but the book also talks about what I was going through, what my family was going through besides baseball. And I had to go from the hospital to the ballpark after my son had surgery, or one of my sons had surgery at the time, and walk. And as soon as I got to the gate with my car and got out of the car, I had a way of turning things off. It was a safety zone for me. And for 6, 7, 8 hours, I could get lost in that. And then when I left the ballpark, I'd have to go back to the hospital or go back to the situation I was in. The one thing about that, and the reason why I wrote the book, was not only because of for my 2 boys, but mainly because of my wife. She didn't have a free area to go to. She was 24/7, 365. And, and I dedicate the book to her because she was so special. We knew each other since we were 15, got married at 18, and September will be 54 years. So
yeah, I was going to say, congrats, at 53, coming up to 54 with Susan. You mentioned neurofibromatosis is the correct diagnosis for Timothy and Justin, correct? Who you lost in a 10-month span in 2019 and 2020. You mentioned the 2 different almost lives that you had to lead. Let's start with, how much joy did they bring you with all their battles and with everything that they did? How much was that? How much did that mean to you too?
Dan, the joy that's what we started thinking about and kind of remembering how much joy they gave us in our lives. And we were blessed, truly blessed, to have them in our lives as long as we did. And we say we'd rather had them. And the tough times, even the tough times that we had with them, they made us grow inside spiritually and mentally. It just, they were a blessing in our lives and would we want them back as sick as they were? No, that's the bottom line. They were suffering. And so I talk about that in the book as well, but it was a true blessing to have them in our lives. I think it made us better people. And the one thing that we try to do is, there's a little etiquette in there too of how to. That's the reason why I wanted to do this book, was that hopefully it can help other people that have gone through the same kind of thing. And there's etiquette. A lot of people would say, I heard you lost your 2 boys. And yes, and well, we know exactly what you're going through. And I'd say, well, thank you. And I wouldn't respond to it. And then sometimes I would. I said, maybe they lost a child. Because for right now, when I'm talking to you about my boys, sometimes I don't want to talk about it. But when I do talk about it, it's healing to me. And my wife the same way. It's healing to us. But sometimes people would say, no, I didn't lose a child, but we had a friend that lost a child. And I just roll my eyes and go, you have no idea. You don't know what you're talking about. So etiquette would be sometimes just putting your hand on someone's shoulder and saying, I got nothing. I care about you. I love you. I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you. But not to say, I know what you're going through. and especially when you don't. And every situation is different. You know, someone might have lost their child at being born, which is horrible. And I don't know what that's like. So every situation is different, and sometimes just a hand on the shoulder, or a hug, or says it all.
Well, Dwight, you certainly can reach a lot of people with the book, you and Susan.
I'm hoping that, Dan.
If there are some parents that are going through it with their children and they're battling that battle, what would you say to them? Because you were in that battle for so long, both of you.
Enjoy every moment with that child. Try to make that child's time on earth a better place. And you know, every situation is different, Dan. You know, I might say something to someone and it'd be different for someone else. The situation could be different, but there's no set words on how to go about it. And when you don't have anything, like I said, there's nothing wrong with a hug or an arm or a hand on the shoulder. Just, I'm with you. You need anything, call me. I'm here. Care about you. So every situation is different.
And you said in the book, you're not mad, right?
Not mad. No. Disappointed. I mean, you know, I would love to have had my boys have a normal life and had kids, and they weren't able to have kids, and I'm afraid of passing that gene on. So I wish they had some normalcy in their life. And they did in a lot of ways. I think a lot of ways that my wife has a sense of humor that's off the charts, and a smile that just lights up the room, and still a very, very attractive woman. And I don't say it because she's in the house with me right now, but she really is. And I couldn't love anybody more. And I couldn't think about going through with this with anybody else. So there's a lot of things in a book that it's just not about baseball. It's about life around the game and what you go through and the ups and downs in the game. There's one story in there that's not in there. I mean, there's one story that I want to tell that's not in there. And I don't know how. And by the way, Erik Sherman, the author, we spent 3 years doing this. And he really brought it full circle and organized it and brought it together. And special guy. I'm trying to think again, Dan, where was I going with that last
You
comment?
had a story that's not in the book.
The story, okay. The story that's not in the book,
Yeah.
that I don't know why I didn't bring it up. I blame Erik for not bringing it up. Was I was 22, 23 years old. I came up at 20. I'm walking around New York in the daytime looking for a place to eat, but I was 1 for 23. And I'm walking around with my head down. And back then we had to wear, a sports coat, slacks. Didn't have to wear a tie, but a dress shirt. I'm walking around with my head down like, woe is me. Why? Just so concerned about, can I still play the game? 1 for 23. And I'm walking under these ledges, and all of a sudden, it had to be about 6 to 8 stories high, a pigeon crapped on my shoulder. And really not knowing God at that time, but I look at my shoulder on my blue blazer, and I look at him, I go, really? Really? So I go back, I clean up, and I go back to the hotel, clean up my jacket the best I can. I go to the ballpark that night, 1 for 23. I go 4 for 4, which was great. The next day, I'm walking all over New York with my blue blazer on, trying to get nailed again. I'm walking under every ledge, everything I can for hours, trying to get another pigeon to crap on me. But just little things like that. There's a lot of good stories in there. There's things that a lot of people can relate to, and a lot of things, good things are going on. It's being received pretty well. I'm pleased about that. That's always a tough, when you write something, put your soul into it and your gut into it. And it's being received well because you're worried about how it's going to be received.
Well, it sounds like, you know,
so far it's being received very
yeah.
well. Some good things I shared with you earlier that are happening, and so it's been a labor of love, but a lot of work, and I can't imagine doing another one. But the people that write books, there's so much that's put into it, editing and just forever. So it's been. I like the way it's being received right now.
Well, let's end it, Dewey, with, you know, again, the name of the book is Dewey Behind the Gold Glove. You talked about your family and you know, all the things that you've gone through. I think Red Sox fans who watched you play for so many years in a Red Sox uniform, you made them feel special. What would you say when I say, what did the Boston Red Sox and your family at the ballpark, you know, whether it be the Johnny Peskys of the world or, you know, Lou Gormans of the world, just people that, you know, you've known and been with forever, your teammates, Yaz, and all the way through. What did they mean to you? A guy like Dick Brashani in the communications department, who we both loved, those kind of people, what did they mean to you in being a member of the Boston Red Sox here in the city of Boston?
I didn't know, really, number one, how when I first came up at 20, and I was received very, very well. And then when you go in a slump, you know, you're booed. When you do good, they cheer you. After about 5 or 6 years, I realized, you know, it's a tough place to play. No, it's not. Once you realize, but a lot of players can't play here. Once you realize that the fans are just emotional, they're going to jump up and down a great play made, or they're going to boo. They're cheering the situation. They're not really, yeah, they're cheering you a little bit, and they're not really booing you. They're booing the situation. And once you realize that they're just emotional, I remember Rick Burleson. And your viewers wouldn't know Rick, but Rick was a great shortstop and a big part. And I came to the minor leagues with him. He went to Anaheim after he got traded to Anaheim from us, and we're in Fenway, and he says, "Dewey," he said, "I just made a great play in Anaheim last night. I dove in the hole, come up, jump up, throw the guy out by a half a step, and you got 20,000 people going, wow," in Anaheim, you know, California mentality. Where he says, we're in Boston, they jump up and down, they let you know. And it hit me then too, that how special it was and is to play in Fenway Park and around these fans. And being around Yaz took me under his, took care of me as a young player. And he was like an older brother to me. And he's even said I was like a younger brother to him. We played 13 years together. Jim Rice and I played 16 years together. That's unheard of. And we went through a lot of stuff. And, you know, when you play with somebody, you're like brothers. You're going to fight sometimes. And things happen. But to play with Jimmy as long as I did, and Yaz as long as I did, and be around a guy like Dick Brashani would always, you know, when he's still alive, he'd say, you got somebody who want to do something on 86 World Series or the 75 World Series or 78 playoff game or whatever. I said, well, Dick, that's 40 years ago, or that's a long time ago. I said, if you're there, I'll do it. Okay, I'll be there. And then they'd ask a question, and I'd look at Dick and I'd say, Dick, public relations, Dick Brashani. I said, Dick, I don't remember that. He goes, don't you remember it was a second rain delay, and it was cloudy. It was off and on rain, and so-and-so was pitching, and the count on you was this and that. And I'm going, who is this guy? You had a chance to be around Dick and how special he was, but his knowledge and his just remembering everything blew me away. And just a neat guy, and I miss him. And he was a special part of the Red Sox, and had a tough job too, trying to get guys to do certain things. And you know, you got the game on your mind. He wants you to go meet kids. You try to do what you could. There's one story, and it's in the book. There's a number of them, but there's one story where this Dick had me meet this kid. They brought him into the foyer of before the clubhouse. And we'll say his name was Ryan. And he said, Ryan's 11 years old. Dick tells me he's 11 years old. He's got liver cancer. And he's given up his chemo and all that and the radiation and everything. He's given up. He doesn't want to go through the treatment. I bring him in a clubhouse, and he meets people, give him a ball signed by everybody. And I let him out the door of the clubhouse, and he said, Dewey, would you do me a favor? And I'm just about ready, because my game is like a half an hour before the game. So I'm so locked in of who's pitching and what I'm going to be facing and the whole thing. He said, would you hit me a home run tonight? I said, Ryan, you don't know what you're asking. And that night I hit a home run. And they brought him back. Nesson brought him back to tell his story. This was like 20 years later. He chose to go back on his treatment after he met with me. And I never knew that. Back then, they wouldn't tell you that so-and-so is still alive. Or,
right.
I never knew what happened to him. I thought he was long gone. And he's in right field, and they've got the cameras on him, and you know, his brother's on the far side. I come into the scene, but he doesn't see me. His brother sees me. His brother starts crying like a little kid. And I start losing a little bit. And then finally, Ryan, if you will, I can't remember his name, but I have it somewhere. He turns over, looks at me, and he starts crying. And I hugged him. I didn't know he was still alive. And it was a great story knowing that. But I wish I had known that while I was playing. That would have encouraged me to do so much more. And I didn't know what it meant to him, but it meant quite a bit. And that's one of the stories. There's stuff like that's in the book. And there's another one that my son just had surgery, like 11 hours. And I'm there after a night game early in the morning, and it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's finally coming out of anesthesia. And he goes, I go, Tim, I got to go. I got batting practice in half an hour. I got to go. I said, I love you. I'll see you after the game. He nodded his head best he could. And I got to the door, just turned the door, and he goes, Dad. I said, what, Tim? What? He goes, will you hit me a home run tonight? I said, Tim, I'll try. I said, I love, kissed him on the forehead, walked out, get to the door, and he goes, Dad. I'm going, what, Tim? He goes, will you hit me 2 home runs tonight? I said, Tim, one's a tall order, 2, I can't promise that, but I'll try. It's documented. I hit 2 home runs that night.
Oh,
I mean, I just wish there'd have been 500 or 600 people who would have asked me to hit home runs. I would have had a lot more home runs. But those are true stories. And
what'd you say to him the next day? Did you say you should ask me to hit 3, right?
No, I didn't have. I wasn't smart enough to say that, and I didn't want him to say it again, because it's not an easy thing to do. You got a round ball with a round bat, and they tell you to hit it square, and it's just, you got a quarter of an inch to square up the ball. And it's not just throwing straight, it's doing things, it's moving, it's changing speeds, and it's a difficult thing to do. So, but those are some of the stories that are in there.
That's cool. I always wanted you to pitch, by the way. Like, you would come in during batting practice or infield, outfield, and you would go off the mound and throw, and you had such a gun in right field. I always be like, I wish you would pitch. I mean, you could see the gas in your motion and everything else too,
I've heard that a lot. And when Ralph Houck was manager, I said, Ralph, if there's ever a situation where, you don't want to use the bullpen because maybe the bullpen's tired, I'd love to pitch an inning or even to a batter. And he goes, nah, it won't happen. I said, why? Because I really want to do it. And he said, what would happen if you hurt your arm on the mound? They'd blame me. And I said, I didn't bring it up again, but I always wanted to do that. I always did. So I did in the minor leagues.
Did you?
Yes. And he brought me in from right field, Rack Slider, who ended up coaching with us and later on in the late 80s, early 90s. He brought me in, and I'm telling you what, I threw hard, but it wasn't easy to throw a strike. I could throw a strike, Dan, I could throw a strike from 300 feet away, one hop to third base or one hop to the catcher, second base or whatever. But I had a tough time. It's footwork. It's I didn't have a wind up, didn't know how to pitch really, but I ended up not giving up a run. I walked two guys, struck out. I think I struck out two, and one guy popped up. But it's something that kind of cured me for a while about pitching.
That's awesome. Again, the name of the book, folks, by Dwight Evans, Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove, available Amazon, bookstore, everywhere. Go out and buy it. Have a great time and enjoy a good read, a good summer read, right? Baseball, a lot of the good stories and some of the stories that are going to touch you personally as well. Dwight, thanks very much for joining us and best of luck with the book.
Thank you, Dan. It's always good to be with you. I appreciate you. Thank you.